this. Perry Thompson has flipped from Alabama to join the Auburn 2024 class. I'm your host on this special live edition of Locked On Auburn. I'm Zach Blackerby, joined by Montgomery radio vet Darrell Dapprich. After being committed to Alabama for over a year, the five-star wide receiver Perry Thompson, he is now committed to the Auburn Tigers. This has been something we've talked about for months, Darrell. It finally happens at Big Cat Weekend.
Even though it seems a little anticlimactic, because in this day and age of social medias and having really good intel and really good sources, and it being said it was going to happen for months, it does not take the shine or the luster. It's like knowing Christmas is coming, but when you wake up Christmas morning, you're still freaking pretty excited. So before we dive too much further into this too, I want to say for, I know that I speak on a lot of the Locked On Auburn family and listeners and viewers, and that's what I was and still am before I became a guest. Kudos to you for what you've done today. You're to be commended. This is your second live show. You're taking a Saturday to do this for the listeners and for the fans. So I just wanted to take a moment to say we appreciate you doing this, and it's great that you're here covering this.
I mean, this is a big deal. You talk about some legacy-changing stuff. I mean, Hugh Freeze is laying the groundwork for this. And we kind of got a little concerned because he was so far behind the eight ball, and we saw this effort, and we saw all these visits. And now all of a sudden, over the past week, Darrell, you can really make the argument over the past week has been one of the biggest weeks in Auburn recruiting ever. And, there's things you can cherry pick. I'm sure there's situations during the Dye era. I mean, obviously, that special class that Chiswick was able to go, that was consensus top 5. Like, there's been special moments. But with what happened this past week with DeMarcus Riddick, and then obviously Malcolm Simmons, a very underrated 4-star wide receiver, which is ridiculous to even kind of say, but then flipping a guy the same week that you beat out Georgia and Alabama for one of the best linebackers in all of high school football, you beat out Alabama and you flip him away from Nick Saban, who, when you read any kind of report from the Alabama side of things, they were relentlessly pursuing still. They're going to change that narrative, but they were still, Nick Saban and his staff were relentlessly still pursuing Perry Thompson to keep him as part of the class. As of about 5 minutes ago, Darrell, he is no longer a part of that class, as he is a member of Hugh Freeze's first full class, these 2024 Auburn Tigers that are coming in.
The reason why I think it's bigger than some of those classes you mentioned, the Dye classes, the Chiswick classes, is because from a historical perspective, I don't remember the last time Auburn got 2 recruits that ended up being in their all-time top 12, like in the same class. They were usually spread out, okay? Yeah. So understand this. This is so very important. Kyle Davis was the highest-rated receiving recruit in Auburn history up until this point, graded out a little bit over a 9.6, right at the threshold of a 5-star. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the last time Auburn got a 5-star receiver. Some people are saying Nate Craig Myers, but I went back and looked, and he was a 95. I mean, Perry Thompson's a .9866. I mean, he's off the chart. I think it puts him 5th.
Oh, my gosh.
All-time recruit, not by position, just all-time recruit in the history of Auburn when they started tracking these things. He is the 5th highest recruit all-time, and he comes right on the heels of a guy that was top 12 in Riddick. When have you ever had a week where you get 2 all-timers in the same week? It's unbelievable. You got the best receiver in Auburn history from a commitment standpoint, and you get top 5 and top 12, and it's within 4 days of each other. And as we know, there could be definitely more to come. And what I don't want this to do also, and that's why I'm so appreciative of what you did earlier in the day, Malcolm Simmons has the potential from some guys that Auburn coaches to be really, really good when he's so raw, athletic. So you get 2 stud receivers in the same day within 3 hours of each other. What a great, great day and a great week to be an Auburn Tiger.
It's unbelievable. All right, Darrell. So with the addition of this 5-star commit, the second 5-star commitment of the week, on On3's rankings, Auburn moves from 16 to 15, which isn't crazy, right? I mean, that's kind of where I thought Auburn would be when this class ended. I think they will continue to rise, which is exciting. But now when you look at average player ranking, which is what the correct way to look at this, especially now with the portal, because some guys are going to take 30 people and some guys are going to take 20. We'll certainly wait to see where Auburn is and all that. But when you look at average player ranking now, Auburn is fourth. Auburn is fourth in the country behind Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and then it's Auburn. And
That's
I mean,
incredible.
when you talk about just impact and path to playing time and what this class could do to really raise the bar and get Auburn football back to where it's supposed to be, this is the kind of crap you got to do. And it's exciting because, Darrell, none of this seems fluky. The way Auburn played the social media game after the first commitment of the day, after adding Simmons, you can tell Auburn filmed it, but then they gave it to Simmons with him kind of being next to Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze calls him up, introduces him as the top 200 player, yada, yada, yada. Malcolm says, next 3 or 4 years, I'm going to be at Auburn. Yay, this is awesome. But they let Malcolm tweet it out because Auburn's not allowed to. But the visual, and I quote tweeted this, I called it a vibe, but I don't think Auburn has felt this cool in a long time. And that you look at all these kids that are going live from their Instagrams, and I mean, Auburn is the place to be again. And I don't know if we could have said that over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But Hugh Freeze has made Auburn cool again, so much so that you're getting 5 stars committing or flipping away from Alabama and Georgia. You're getting 2 the last week.
Well, I think, dare I say, that when you mentioned this is the kind of thing you have to do to get Auburn back to where they need to be, I think that's great. And I think that's an absolutely factual statement. But I would say that these type of recruits and what just happened in the last 4 or 5 days might be exactly what you need to do to get Auburn into some uncharted territory too. And that's what needs to happen. Auburn doesn't need to be satisfied with a cap and say, okay, I just want to go back to competing for championships. Clemson did it. Georgia did it. Alabama did it. Right coach, right recruiting. There's no reason why Auburn can't, especially with a 12-team playoff, can't compete for championships every year and get into the playoff almost every year with it being 12 teams. And that's kind of where that's going where you've never been before. This is what you have to do to get there. Absolutely have to do what was done in the last 4 days to be bold enough to make that proclamation and get there. And that's what's great. You're right. And Hugh Freeze has made Auburn – look, anybody that wants to say – I've had people, and I've seen it on social, Alabama fans that are salty saying, he followed the money. Are you freaking kidding me? Let's be honest. Are you telling me that in this day and age of college football – that Alabama didn't have the resources to match any potential NIL deal? Or is this about paving your own way? Alabama's had Julio Jones, and they've had Devontae Smith, and they have all these great players. Perry Thompson wants to be the one that's the guy that paves his own path.
Darrell, there is a chance for any of these guys now with a combination of the scheme and what Hugh Freeze brings to an offense versus just the talent that Auburn's kind of not really had at receiver in a hot minute. There's a chance Perry Thompson leaves with several records and is in the conversation for best receiver in Auburn history when he's done. Like, that is a very real conversation that we could be having in 3 years.
Because we've seen other receivers that have gone to other schools, the Pickens, the Julio Jones, where that stamp, that anointing was put on them and they lived up to those expectations. Thompson's that dude. He's the guy that with all the hype and all the expectations can fulfill those. And Auburn hasn't had a receiver like that in a very, very long time that was elite. I mean, I want to go back to the days where Auburn has an All-American at receiver that can take the top off. And then people are talking about, oh, the Auburn receiver could go in the top 10. That's not happened. And don't underestimate A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf having already paved that path that played for Hugh Freeze. There's credibility in that now. There is exhibit A. Hey, I put these guys in the league. Look how good they are. You can do the same thing for me here at Auburn. That is huge, in my opinion.
No question about it. All right, looking at Perry Thompson, he's 6'3", 205, And he is a 5-star when you look at the On3 industry rankings, as well as the 247 sports composite. And a guy that could be explosive at all parts of the field. Foley's not afraid to throw it deep to him. He's dynamic in the route running game, which makes him effective in the intermediate passing game. And he's also a guy that you can just get the ball, get it to his hands behind the line of scrimmage, and he can make people miss. I mean, this is a complete wide receiver, Darrell. I mean, this is a guy that is very, very special. And there's a reason why every school in college football wanted him. And he's in Auburn today, and he officially flipped once Hugh Freeze kind of arrived at the pool party, and he seemed excited to do so. And just the energy around once he did all of that was, it's electric stuff. Watching it on Walker White's Instagram Live, it's just such a cool thing. But Perry Thompson can beat defenders at every part of the field there. I mean, that's what makes him so special.
He runs routes at such an elite level right now. Watching film on him, you think you're watching a college receiver. He's that polished. He's that crisp coming out of his break. You know, at that age, Zach, and when you're that physically better than everybody else, sometimes you can get lazy and sloppy in route running and just go, I'm so good, I can just go up and get it, right? But I watch him trying to perfect his craft on huddle and some other places, and I've done this the last week in anticipation of this. Go back and watch his route. He doesn't take a route off just because he is bigger physically and stronger and better and has elite hands. He runs the route like the guy that he's lined up against is better than him.
Yeah.
And that's huge. It's elite. It's crisp. It's advanced. And I can't wait to see how he progresses. But, honestly, it's been a very long time since Auburn's had a freshman receiver make an immediate impact. And this is a kid that should do that.
Somebody commented that that Auburn is now the 17th class on 247 sports. If somebody could drop in where we rank in the SEC on 247, that'd be helpful. I'd appreciate that, because I believe we are still the 8th ranked class in the SEC when you look at the big picture rankings. But I think we all agree that they overvalue quantity versus quality with all of that. So because several of you, the theme in the live chat right now is, how do we only move up one spot from 16 to 15 with adding a 5-star and a 4-star? And it's like, yeah, but when you look at the average player ranking, you move from 8th to 4th. And I care more about that.
Yeah. We've said this before on other podcasts. Keep in mind too, the quality and the average star ranking is the most important thing, because those are the ones to get out of the way that are the hardest to get. The highest quality player is the hardest to get in a recruiting class. The quantity, the numbers, they'll come just by natural progression. And you can bet your rear end that they'll come now with some of the guys that are committing to Auburn. Auburn has the opportunity now to be a little bit more choosy, I think, in filling out their class. If they want to take 22 or 23 kids, the last 7 or 8 may look different than they might have a year ago. They can be a little bit more picky and be a little bit more choosy in position and quality.
Yeah, I think you hinted at this a little bit, but doesn't it add so much credibility once you get some 5-stars in your class, which we have not been able to say in a hot minute? And all of a sudden we get to be plural with it. We have 5 stars in this class with Riddick and Perry joining it. And I just think it's going to raise legitimacy. So we hinted at this before, and Charlie 5 said it almost every week for months. It seems like you're so close with all these top dudes. Somebody's just got to be first. And Joe Phillips was first, because let's not kid ourselves. If Joe Phillips would have committed to Georgia, he would have had a lot more buzz around him, because we all realize how good Joseph Phillips is. And he seemed to be the first one to do that. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, any of these kids could pop now. And this weekend's not over. I think there's going to be at least one more this weekend. And I think he will be much larger than the 2 guys that have committed so far. But all in all, it seems to almost add the credibility of, okay, Hugh Freeze, what he's building is legitimate. And now it's okay to come join us.
Great point. And Joseph Phillips was that dude because of the offer list. But I want to go. I want to go back to Walker White as being the first recruit in this class that I really got jazzed about and excited. Remember, we did that live. Charlie 5 was in a ditch in his car. I don't remember what happened. There was like, all this going on. And what we said then was we suspect Walker White could be very effective in reaching out and getting more dudes to jump in this class. I don't know how important or how relevant he has been in some of these dudes coming on board, but he seems to be very, very close and connected to these guys and reaching out to them on their socials. So Phillips, from an offer list standpoint, Walker White from, wow, we just got this dude. Awesome. We were so jazzed and excited about that.
Yeah, and he set the tone, and clearly Perry's fine with him announcing on Walker's Instagram live, like, that's cool, whatever, because it goes against the narrative of there are so many people that said he wanted to make it about him. He wasn't going to commit at Big Cat because he wanted some big produced thing. Yeah. And it's like, no, you misread the kid. Sorry. He just wanted to be a part of this class, and he wanted to be around the people that he's going to be competing with. So, sorry. Like, I don't really understand why that was a narrative, but
how about that combination? Maybe 2 years from now, right? We may be seeing a little sneak peek of, that duo, that tandem. And that may be why Perry Thompson was so willing and ready to let it be Walker White, involved in that. I think that's a great chemistry thing that we may see for 2-3 years down the road.
Okay, I'm being told he was on his live as well, so that's cool too. But still, the point of the argument was he wasn't going to commit at Big Cat because he wanted some big produced thing is incorrect. That is wrong. That is not a true thing that happened. So, I don't know. I think there was a lot of people wrong about this over the past few months, and a lot of them came from the other side of the state. And I think there's a lot of Auburn people that doubted what Hugh Freeze was building, and it just feels really good that, because we felt the feeling of being close for forever as Auburn people. Like, we felt the feeling of being close. We felt hope. And then that's kind of why we're almost afraid to get hopeful, because we've been burned so many times, because getting second in recruiting doesn't matter. Like, we've been second to Alabama and Georgia for these top kids a million times. Now, all of a sudden, we're winning these closer battles at a more consistent rate. And we talked about it. We talked about it last week when Riddick announced. The first step is you get one player that Alabama and Georgia wants. Then you get two. Now they're up to three. And maybe that number could be rising more and more. But I don't know, Darrell. This is just such a huge moment. This is such a huge moment for Auburn football and Hugh Freeze.
It's historical. I mean, I'm not trying, people can laugh all they want and think that this is, over the top or whatever, but I don't care. I've been following Auburn athletics for 35 years. I loved recruiting all the way back to when you used to have to go get it in magazines. And I'm telling you that this class, from a standpoint of what's happened in the last week from all-time recruits, it's historical. Yes, yeah. Auburn's had great classes that, cumulatively have gotten into the top 10. But go back and tell me when you've gotten two guys in the same class that are top 12 all time. It's huge, and it's historical, and it's what you need. We have been, we've had tasted a little bit of a taste of that before, but that's the problem. It's always been a one-off or a two-off. I want sustainability. I want there to be, okay, let's be honest. What Bruce Pearl has done with this basketball program is Auburn expects every year to compete for SEC championships and get to the big dance. That's what Bruce Pearl has built from an expectation standpoint. Football's different. I get it. But again, I'll repeat what I said. With a 12-team playoff and with a coach that knows what he's doing on the field and off the field, Auburn could and should expect to compete for not a division title anymore, SEC championships, and be considered for the 12-team playoff. Period. End of story. They're good enough to do that, like LSU and Georgia and some of those other teams that feel like they're there.
Yeah, Auburn
should expect that.
And it always helps when you get a guy that you believe is your quarterback.
Yes.
I mean, you're in the conversation. This is going to be a top 12 class, I think, when it's all said and done, especially by average player ranking, which we all agree is what we care about here. And when one of those is your quarterback, that certainly seems like he's going to fit Hugh Freeze's system and he's going to be coached by guys that know how to coach quarterbacks, have a great track record of it. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
What does it do for a 2025 quarterback that Auburn may be going after that's elite? When you start showing them the receivers he may be throwing to, who knows how long someone will be, but you still have that, I don't know, in your back pocket to say, hey, man, you know, I know that Auburn's probably done from a quarterback standpoint this year, but next year, if they want to go after an elite quarterback, you have the goods now to show.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're right. And also, I think there's some nervousness about like what this class could turn into. But when we've had consistently good classes in the past, they weren't well-rounded, right? Like we would get the quarterback talent or the receiver talent, but you wouldn't get the offensive line talent. And now all of a sudden, like I think we've got our coaching staff that understands you need a full roster to be able to compete. And so we'll certainly see what that has to do with everything moving forward, which I think, and several people are talking about it, like offensive line. Darrell, I think there's a really good chance that you're there. The folks that want an offensive lineman, I think they're going to be happy with something in the next 48 hours. Just
I
to
agree.
guess.
I agree. I mean, I do too, because if you look at some of the kids, let's remember that these are unofficial visits. So you have to pay your own way to get here. And think about how far a few of those offensive linemen came.
Can you imagine a guy like, I don't know, not DeMarcus Carter. DeAndre Carter.
Yeah.
I'm still hyped about DeMarcus Riddick. Yeah. Matter Days is not very close to Auburn.
No. And he's been here since Thursday night, is what I've been told. Or early Friday morning, he flew into Atlanta. That dude's paying his own way. I mean, from California, you're not driving from Lochapoka. You're flying from California and on your own dime to be here and be a part of this. What does that say? That's culture. That's atmosphere. It's, I want to be there. I ain't missing this with these dudes. They got it going on. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what you were talking about making it cool again.
There's no question about it. All right, let's answer some questions. Hunter asks, could Walker to Perry be the best duo in Auburn history?
Let's pump the brakes on that a little bit.
But first we got to ask the question, like, what is the best duo?
Sullivan to Beasley.
And like, I think they could be better than that.
Yeah. Well,
statistically, I think they could be better than that.
Yeah.
As far as like lore and stuff like that, I don't know.
Well, no, statistically, absolutely, because it's a different era of college football and you're throwing it 30 times where Pat Sullivan did not. Yes, exactly. And these offenses and these 3-4 receiver sets and airing it out is completely different than the early 70s. I get it. I'm just saying for lore and I mean, statistically it's hard. But we can play that game too and say, what would have Sullivan and Beasley done in an era where they put it up 40 or 50 times a game?
No, I'm with you. But as far as statistically, they could be. Walker's got to win the job. And, you know, Perry's got to translate, which I think they both will. I think both of those things will happen during their Auburn career. But that's the expectation, right? I mean, and that's what the expectation should be, because I think everything's going to fall in line for those things to happen. It just comes down to execution.
I'll second for Hunter, and just for you, I'd put Nix to Sanders second.
Okay.
Really, I will live through it. 93, 94, Nix was elite to Sanders. That was a great combination, and they put up a lot of stats. So I'd put them second. But, potentially, statistically, why not?
All right. And then, K, that's how I'm going to pronounce that. Overall, still 7th in the SEC. Average player ranking, Auburn is number 3 in the league. 1.3 star average split at most. So, I mean, still, there's a way to go, right? There's ways to go, but that average player ranking being 3rd in the SEC, I think a few years of that in a row is enough to give you a chance, because after Alabama and Georgia, the issue is Auburn has to play those 2 teams every year.
Right.
And nobody else really has to do that. But outside of that
might change. Thankfully, that might change too. Think about that going forward.
But after media days, though, it seems like 9's the option. But we'll certainly wait to see on that. But I mean, this is great. 3rd in the SEC as far as average player ranking goes. If you would have told us all that 6 months ago, we would have been like, yes, I will take that. Where do I sign?
Oh, absolutely. And has the potential has the potential to even move. Two things are going to happen. We know Auburn's probably going to get 6 or 7 more kids committed before signing day. So numbers helps your recruiting ranking. And then the couple of the names we heard that could pop here in the next month or so are not kids that are going to hurt your average star ranking.
That's correct.
So it's a great combination of both. It really is.
Yep. All right. Kevin asks, Zach, what faith do we put in these guys shutting down their commitments? Because God knows we've seen too much of that at Auburn. You're correct, Kevin. And I think that's why so many Auburn fans are a little hesitant to get excited about everything that Hugh Freeze and his staff are doing. But I do think there's a few differences here. With these guys that are flips, it's really, you don't see guys flip more than once too often. Does it happen? Sure. But usually once you see guys commit and they're committed to somebody for a long time, over a year in both of these cases with Riddick and Perry, you don't typically see that happen again because they've already kind of done their recruiting process. A lot of these guys, especially with the timing, because starting next week, a lot of these guys are going to really pick up, fall camp and getting ready for their senior seasons. And these are all guys that want to compete for a championship at the high school level. So they're going to be really focused more so on that than being recruited. So I think the timing and the fact that a lot of these guys have already kind of flipped is one thing. You've also seen, help me out here, Darrell. I know you've seen Fat Burnett's put out a statement saying he's done, and Joseph Phillips did as well.
Phillips said he's
and that
done.
was actually the one I was most worried about because he never actually flipped. He was close to going to Georgia,
right,
but he never actually flipped. That was one I was worried about. But him shutting it down, that was nice. That was a big win for Auburn too.
Great point. It's very, this snip, snap, flip, flop, back and forth. That doesn't really happen. Usually it's a kid that commits to Auburn early in the process, and then on signing day, get your heart. I mean, even like the guys like Reuben Foster and TJ Yeldon, I don't remember being it being such a big deal when they committed to Auburn or when they said they were, going to go to Auburn. So it's different. I mean, it really is completely. What makes it different but similar is that Auburn's in the other side of the equation that Alabama used to be in. The kids committed to Alabama or Georgia for a while, and then Auburn gets them to flip. That's what's happened to Auburn.
You're right. Joseph's, he is saying, Zach, quit playing with my heart. I'm over here trying to get excited. Get Carter, DeAndre Carter, the tackle from Mater Dei, and KJ Bolden, the #1 safety in the country. And I may lose my mind. I feel really good about one of those, and I feel pretty good about the other one. So there's a lot. Bolden left. He is heading to Michigan as we do this live broadcast, Darrell. He is heading to Michigan. That was already in the plans. That was pre-planned. He was going to leave from Auburn and go to Michigan regardless. So there's no reason to be concerned about that. Bolden was never going to commit this weekend. That was never in the cards. He is going to set his announcement and all of that. Sounds like in about a week and a half, Darrell, unless you've heard otherwise. But
I've heard a week and a half. August 11th is what I've heard.
Was texting with somebody earlier in the day. Sounds like his family really wants him to go to Georgia. I think KJ wants to go to Auburn. So we'll see how that plays out. That's always tough when you get the family tug in one direction. We've seen how those all play out. But again, we've seen how when you're truly at the level you're supposed to be, those kids want to play so bad at a particular institution that they even go against what their How many times have we seen those announcements for kids like safeties and stuff that committed to Alabama and mom's over there pouting when he takes the Alabama hat and puts it on when she wanted him to go to LSU? That's when it's culture and atmosphere and you really, really want to be somewhere as you go against what even parents want and pulling that tug. Scott coming and asking, did he flip? Yes. Let's just say it again because it feels good to say, Darrell.
He flipped.
Perry Thompson committed to Alabama for over a year. 5-star wide receiver Perry Thompson flipped from Alabama to Auburn. I can't say that enough. KJ is committing on August 5th. Is that what you said?
I thought it was the 11th. He must have pushed that forward then. Yeah.
I'm not positive.
I thought it was the 11th.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see. Chris says, Zach, what number of wins this coming season could negatively impact the current commitments we have now? Or would it at all being they're probably preaching a brighter future for Auburn? I mean, I think if you go like 3-9, that's a problem. But I don't think there's going to be a big difference as far as what you already have committed. If you go 6-6, 7-5, 8-4. Now, I do think the upside for the recruiting aspect of it is I think you're more likely to flip people in December if you have a better record. But I think everybody that's committed up to this point is buying future. Like you said in that question, Chris. Do you agree with that, Darrell? I think a lot of people are buying into like
because they're not going to be on. Yes, because they're not going to be able to do anything about the 2023 Auburn football team. What they're concerned about is the impact they're going to make when they take the field in 2024 and how they can change the narrative at that point. So does it help filling out the class? Sure it does. But I don't think they're looking at what's going to happen when all those dudes that are there together in the swimming pool right now are going to be Auburn Tigers together.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could only improve your lot and your situation. I don't see how you could hurt it from a recruiting standpoint.
I agree with you. I just think the path to playing time for so many of these guys that we're pursuing is extremely exciting. I mean, you look at all these defensive backs they're bringing in. What is Auburn about to lose like 4 or 5 of after the season?
Right.
Defensive backs. Wide receiver. You're going to lose all of your outside guys. I mentioned this in the first live when I was gassing up Malcolm earlier, our first commitment of the day, where we got like Nick Mardner, Shane Hooks, and Jair Shorter, all these big-bodied outside wide receivers that transferred in. They're out of eligibility after this year. And so like Perry Thompson is going to play. He's going to play as a freshman. Malcolm Simmons is going to play as a freshman. I think they're good enough to. They just got to kind of get it together. And I mean, you commit this early so you can kind of take care of business this fall, doing your high school thing, graduate high school, and then early enroll and compete for jobs. They're going to compete for jobs in the spring, Darrell. I mean, a lot of these kids have more natural talent than the guys that are already on the roster. And especially at a position wide receiver, which is really unfortunate for these kids because it's not their fault. But a lot of Auburn's wide receivers currently on the roster that have been here for a minute, maybe not necessarily the transfers, but the guys that have been here, they've missed a big chunk of like when they could have developed as receivers because they weren't coached well. And it stinks. Yeah. They believed in what Auburn had at the time, and they were wrong, but thankfully they chose to stick it out and stay for this with this new staff. But I think these young guys that are going to be coming in that are just as raw. Simmons is more raw than Perry. I think Perry's, come out of the box ready to play kind of guy, but they're going to be able to compete and I think win against some of these older guys. I'm just being honest with you.
And let's go back. It's been years and years. It wasn't just the previous regime. Gus's regime was the schematics, the way they ran the routes, the route tree was so elementary. There was no development. Even Darius Slayton didn't mean to be ugly about it. And Ricardo Lewis talked about how they didn't feel like they got prepared at Auburn to go into the next level and play at the NFL. It was just, it's hard to run the offense that was run those years and put an elite receiver in the league because, like I said, the route tree was as elementary as me and you drawing it up on a paper football. I mean, It was brutal. So now you're going to see different, more, elite routes and route running and play calling and that kind of thing, and an offense that's more conducive. And you're right. I feel bad for the receivers. There could have been some dudes that really would have benefited that could have went into the league and high draft picks had they played under this regime.
Apparently Hugh Freeze got thrown into the pool by the commitments. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
That's what exactly needs to happen. That tells me they love their coach. They're not just dumping little water bottles on them.
I mean, it's probably good.
Pool,
I mean,
the whole pool.
Well, in all their Instagram lives, they were talking about how hot it was. It probably made it colder because they needed to be freezing.
Yeah, it was like frozen. That whole thing just turned into ice at that point, right?
We're both dads. That was a dad joke.
Well, granddad too. That's what I've been. Yeah, I'm a little bit.
That's a flex. That's a flex. All right. So as far as expectations for the rest of the weekend, Darrell, where are you in all of this?
I think 2 more come. I think we get
2 more. Okay.
I think 2 more recruits. I do believe, just an opinion, I think Carter is going to commit, and there may be somebody else that commits. We'll see. But I don't think it's going to be KJ, but I think Carter goes, and there's probably somebody else that's the Walker kid, maybe. Keep an eye on him. Some other kids that are here that kind of I'll tell you something that's intriguing to me, and I don't know how this is going to play out, especially the way Auburn's been loading up on receivers. But that Carr kid from Georgia that committed to Georgia and just showed up at Big Cat, that's huge.
There's a lot of Georgia commits that just showed up. There's a 2025 linebacker committed to Georgia, and there were a few guys on the beat that were like, watch out for this kid. And it came from people that like wouldn't say that unless like they actually like knew something. So that's interesting.
And they're not coming here to recruit for Georgia. That ain't happening with this group, I can assure you.
I'm with you.
About thrown in the pool. He's not going to be Reuben Fostering anybody and coming here and talking about come to Alabama. These kids, I think, are interested and curious as to what's going on over here. And when a kid like Riddick, just commits, they go, wow, let me see what's up. DeMarcus, committed. Let me see what's going on over there. So that's why I think you're going to see a surprise maybe this weekend.
KJ Bolden tweeting out a picture with Hugh Freeze, Perry Thompson, and DeMarcus Riddick with the eyes emoji.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I don't know if I can handle that.
I just think we're going to get him, Darrell.
Yeah, I think we're going to get him. Well, I think we're going to get him. I just think he wants to spread his out so that his is a little bit more about KJ, which is nothing wrong with that. You don't want to get lost in the shuffle, right? Riddick had his moment. Thompson had his moment. Give Bolden his moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild. I can't believe this is all happening. This just doesn't feel real.
It really doesn't.
I mean, it's just so different than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, it is. I harken back to what it felt like with Trooper Taylor and Chiz and them that first year when they got Carl Lawson and some of those guys. It felt like, wow, this is different. But then the sustainability of that. And then, and everything that happened after that. So this does feel, and again, nothing in that class was two all-timers. You just got two all-timers in the top, two guys in the top 12. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And the last piece of the puzzle is the one that's the most gratifying. And that's what we have to look forward to as fans when this translates to Saturdays at Jordan-Hare. Because it's coming.
Yeah.
And I go back to that cold November night in Jordan-Hare last year against Texas A&M when we felt the shift. We felt the change. We said, you know what? We're going to get out of the wilderness. Better times are ahead. And this was a small taste of what's to come. Auburn fans feeling good about Auburn again. We talked about it on the reaction pod that night, that we felt like there was a seismic shift. And ever since then, from the hiring of Freeze, even the Lane Kiffin train derailing did nothing to stop the momentum. Because Freeze came in, took a class 35 spots up from one spot to top 20, portal king, all that has just been good vibes and good feelings. And I think we're just going to see it continue. But let's not underestimate what happened, that evening in Jordan-Hare.
Samuel, the sniper, said Bolden commented on Perry's live saying, "Wait on me."
That's hilarious.
It is. That's great. Samuel, are you actually a sniper? Because that's interesting. Would love to have you on the show if that's the case.
Yeah,
I'd love to ask questions on that. Could the duo, Lance Leonard asked, could the duo of Perry and Camden Brown be the next Metcalf and A.J. Brown? I'm going to say no on that.
And I love Camden Brown.
Right.
A lot,
I'm going to say no on that. The other guys are really good. They're really good. And, they're two top, 6 or 7 guys in the NFL right now. I don't think Auburn has that on the roster right now.
Yes.
No disrespect to Camden and Perry. I think they're both going to be very effective and very good in this offense. That's a lot. That's a lot to predict.
It's really you don't want to have unfair expectations, right? To kids that are coming in. Although a kid like Thompson seems like he could just eat it up. I mean, he seems like he'd be fine with that. Chew it up and spit it out.
Yep. All right, we got 3 or 4 more minutes, guys. If you want to drop an opinion, a take, a question in. If you just want to say that you're bugging, that's cool too. It's definitely, we've just talked about this for months. I was texting with the guy that makes our graphics. His name is Austin. And he made the graphic for Perry back in April. I mean, this has been rumored for a long time. And some folks were saying, oh, the longer it takes, the less likely it is to happen, which isn't a ridiculous opinion to have. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that it finally happened and like this staff closed is just such a strong detail that does not need to be overlooked.
That shows me that back channels and working behind the scenes and really putting in all the effort that's requiring, when they talk about recruiting being truly a 24/7 type enterprise, that's what it is. And I think the one good thing that I've always thought separated elite coaches, they can enjoy their success while keeping an eye on the future, meaning live in the moment and enjoy what you've just accomplished, but realize what it takes to stay there. So right when Hugh Freeze wrapped up that 23 class and everyone was like, my God, what he did to move that class 35 spots is amazing. Mm-hmm. The day after that class the ink was signed on those commitment letters, he was thinking about what's going on right now and putting that plan in motion.
You're right. You're right. Chelsea is asking, how does the commit affect Auburn? I mean, I think flipping Perry Thompson from Alabama does a lot of things. So we kind of put a bow on this. We'll circle back to kind of Perry Thompson's commitment, like the pure meaning of that. One, it means Hugh Freeze can take talented players from Alabama and Georgia. It solidifies that because they've done it twice this week. 5 stars. The guys that everybody in college football, every football team in all of college football would take these 2 players. That's the first thing. The second thing is I think it opens the door and invites any elite player to say, hey, it's okay to come to play for Hugh Freeze and Auburn. That's what it means. And then also just he's going to get on the field early and he's going to play as a freshman and he's going to be really, really good. And he's got a chance to be one of Auburn's best receivers ever whenever he moves on to the NFL draft.
I think out of those 3 points you made, the one that gets me the most excited is that Auburn is getting players that are highly coveted by not just players that are mid in the SEC, but elite championship winning programs. They wanted them and they wanted them bad, and Auburn got them. And I think that right there is the benchmark, right, of what we are and what's happening.
Yep, that's right. All right, as we wrap up, everybody type in boog, that they're booging in the live chat. I think that'd be fantastic. Also, please like this video and please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 12,000 by the end of fall camp. I think we'll get there. We'll certainly see. If we keep getting 5 stars, it'll definitely be the case. Darrell, in the meantime, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
You can follow me on Twitter. It's right there, DAP6410. Also, catch me in the Locked On Auburn Discord. I love chatting about all these kind of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can find all of our written work about all these commits and what could be coming. That's at auburndaily.com, and follow all my socials at Blackerby. Texas and Alabama fan, make sure they're okay. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.